Hello, my name is David Cann and I'm going to read extracts from a book recently published by Martin Caplan, a man now working as a teacher in Eastern Europe. He cannot reveal his true identity for fear of losing his job. The rest of what I have to say is from Martin's book, titled The Silence of the Gentleman: How Men's Excessive Politeness and Lenience Towards Women in the Professional World Diminishes Their Own Standing and Contributes to the Decline of the West. I do like a snappy book title. I always considered it right and natural to help a woman struggling with her luggage at a station or with a baby carriage in the city. I used to consider it just as natural to help my female work colleagues with physical and other difficult tasks on the job, like replacing the water bottle and carrying heavy objects, or helping them with various computer and computer software problems, which often required a deeper understanding of IT than they had. Basically, I carried out many times many duties for them, duties which should have been shared equally in the job. I used to do these things automatically, never giving it a second thought. Unfortunately, the women accepted the favours and the goodwill as things they were entitled to, but they didn't return the favours in any way. I began to notice that my female colleagues made tea and coffee for each other on a daily basis, but never offered any to me or asked me if I wanted some. I suppose they considered it their right to get help from a man, but making tea or coffee for him as something demeaning or oppressive to women. I thought that was strange, if not rude, considering that I did many difficult tasks for them automatically without thinking. In other words, they took all of my help for granted. The more I thought about that, the more I began to realize that it was fundamentally wrong. It also occurred to me that this situation was not only unfair to male workers, but it logically and fundamentally undermined the cohesion, efficiency and health of the company. Once, when I was shopping at a home improvement store, I wanted to look at a small piece of furniture that was on an upper shelf. I asked a nearby employee, who happened to be a woman, if I could take a look at it. Instead of taking the ladder and bringing the object down by herself, she asked the nearest male colleague to do it for her. At that point, I realized that the female sense of privilege is endemic in most Western companies, that women expect men to help them whenever they need it, but rarely return the favor. I thought that the female attitude I had observed created an unfair burden on male workers, and that all tasks should be shared equally among employees. It also occurred to me that companies would be more efficient that way. After witnessing similar situations in many companies, I came to the conclusion that female workers are only apparently equal to their male counterparts due to men's gentlemanly help, perks, and intentional overlooking of their deficiencies and weaknesses. I'm not saying this applies to all places of employment, but it does apply to most. The same logic also applies to sports. Female players are demanding equal pay, but you have to ask, is their performance equal to men's? Everyone knows men's soccer is far more dynamic and exciting than women's soccer. That's why it generates a lot more revenue. What about tennis? Not only is the man's game more powerful, exciting and dynamic, matches are usually a lot longer for two main reasons. Firstly, men are required to play at least one set extra as a minimum. Secondly, men contest each point with far more determination, tenacity and stamina than women do. This almost always results in men playing longer matches than women. Often their matches are more than twice as long as women's matches. Despite that, men and women are paid equally in almost all major tennis tournaments. You may think that's acceptable, especially if you're a woman, but most men can see that they're expected to work harder than women for the same pay in many positions in the world of work. Why? Simply to be considered gentlemen. The gentleman doctrine was created in the Victorian era for everyday life situations, on the assumption that women were weaker and less capable than men. That's why niceties and perks were accorded to women. Clearly, it was never meant for and has never no place for in the professional world. And it's time for men to realize this and speak out against it. How can equality be applied in a merit-based capitalist system? It has always been a mystery to me just how the people who demand equal pay and equal opportunity imagine that this should be achieved in the real world. What should a world of equality look like? Should Lionel Messi, one of the highest scoring forwards and most valuable soccer players today, be paid the same as some defender of average ability or a low scoring forward? If all players were paid equal wages, regardless of their performance, what motivation would the most capable players have to keep trying to do their best? What motivation would the lower scoring players have to try and match the higher scoring players? The answer is little or no motivation. That's human nature, like it or not. It's called reality. If all players were paid the same amount, not only would the team stop improving, but it would actually start declining. And for the same reason, female players can't expect to be paid the same as male players if their performance is deemed less impressive and their games attract a much smaller audience. Despite all the equality demands, women still expect men to pay for a date or a dinner, and the more attractive they are, the more they expect the men to pay for it. I suppose this sense of entitlement has a lot to do with their demands of equal pay, be it with or without merit. They really believe they deserve it all, simply for being women. That's their mentality. There are even suggestions women should use their attractiveness to get ahead in the professional world. I suppose it does make sense for models in the fashion industry, but what good will it do in an engineering company unless the female engineer is as talented as she is attractive? The chances of that happening are slim, at least in my experience. As for hiring practice, all private as well as state companies should be free to decide for themselves which prospective new employees have the highest potential to contribute to the most to the company. This can be judged based on qualifications or an applicant's track record, or hopefully both, but gender shouldn't be a consideration. Yet, under feminist pressure, companies are forced to hire a certain number of female engineers, even in cases where more capable male engineers are available. These quotas deny job opportunities for qualified men and hurt a company's competitiveness. Is that justice? Needless to say, that new practice has negative consequences for the unfortunate companies. And this unfair practice has been going on across America and the Western business world for a long time now. It's no surprise then that so many US companies, burdened with this type of politically correct legislation, would rather set up shop in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Brazil, Thailand, or anywhere else, rather than at home, where they're handicapped by quotas that force them to hire less qualified applicants. It has very harmful consequences for national security too, because the more companies manufacture abroad, the more technology is passed on to the host countries. Those host countries take Western technology and develop their own products based on what they learned from our companies. Due to their lower labor costs, they then outcompete our companies in the world markets. Much of the technology has military applications as well, and that technology is stolen too and could be used against us in the future. Mobile phones, computers, TVs, and other similar products on the market these days were invented by Westerners, but copied and successfully marketed overseas. Foreign companies now outsell the West in almost every category. The lesson learned here is that due to our gentleman mindset, trying to please women and make them feel equal to men in performance, we are allowing the slow destruction of our industrial base. That's a high price to pay just to continue the Victorian era gentleman tradition in a time and place it simply doesn't belong. If women want equal pay and opportunities, they should show that they deserve them. They shouldn't be given special treatment just because they're women. I wasn't the best student at school, and readily admit it. Many of my classmates or friends studied harder or were more serious about it than I was. Some of them are directors of companies now, earning a lot more than I do. On the other hand, I traveled a lot more and experienced a lot more than they did. Should I now, in the name of equality, whine and complain that they earn more than me? I had the same opportunities as they had, but chose a different path in life. On the other hand, some of my former classmates studied less than me. They earn less than me and haven't traveled the world either. In the name of equality, should I feel guilty about that and share my salary, possessions, and knowledge with them? Would it be fair to my richer classmates who worked harder than me to be earning the same as me? Would it be fair to me to earn the same salary as some of my less ambitious classmates who didn't work as hard as I have? I suggest that those who think they should have equal pay and benefits as wealthier people should first share their own salaries and material possessions with poorer people. I've yet to see any of them do this. At least they would then practice what they preach. Another issue where equality is at odds with reality is suitability. Why should a female secretary who can type hundreds of words per minute, who can multitask, has a pleasant voice, a charming manner and appearance, be paid the same salary as a male or female secretary who types slower, can't multitask, and doesn't have a pleasant voice, manner or appearance? She shouldn't. Women wouldn't tolerate women of lesser ability getting the same pay and benefits as them. The reality of the situation is that perfect equality never existed, doesn't exist now, and will never exist in the future, because it can't, as long as human beings are different from birth. Many naive people think communist societies embodied equality. However, real equality didn't exist in the communist world. The ruling party elites, their families and friends enjoyed far more privileges than the common people. While everything technically belonged to the state, only the privileged elites had access to things like expensive cars, luxury vacation houses, foreign travel, quality consumer products, etc. So what difference did it make to ordinary people that everything belonged to the state when they could never use it? Are women as suited as men to being minors? Are men as suitable as women in jobs that involve caring for children or working in nursery schools? Are women as suited to construction jobs as men, though they have 30% less upper body strength? Obviously not. Men and women are different, and ideology shouldn't be used as a reason to try and make them the same. In most animal species, the female is different from the male and performs a different role. Gender differentiation applies to all other species. Why shouldn't it apply to humans too? Statistics prove that female engineers, scientists, mathematicians, designers and inventors lag far behind their male counterparts in performance. Demanding equality with those more capable in any type of job without proving oneself is a sign of laziness, envy, and an attempt to get ahead without merit. We're all different, have different skills, talents and abilities. And that's true not only between the genders, but also between different men and women. Instead of demanding unrealistic, delusional equality, we should all focus on that which we're good at and pursue it to the best of our abilities. That adherence to true competitiveness is what enables organisms to adapt to the demands of the real world. In that way, a person, whether male or female, is far more likely to find success. I turn to teamwork and the conditions for its success. Most people have some knowledge of the game of chess. It consists of two opposing teams, each consisting of pawns, rooks, bishops, castles, a queen and a king. All the pieces on the board are equally important to the functionality of the team as a whole. They help each other, support each other, work in tandem. Yet not all have equal power, ability or impact on the outcome of the game. All players value the most valuable pieces more than the least powerful ones. Why? Because they are more important than the others for the outcome of the game. Chess was designed based on life experience, and it's a reflection of life. Every team, be it in sport, the military or business, is reflected in the game of chess. Each player is the company's CEO, the team's captain, the orchestra's conductor, the army's officers and foot soldiers. If each piece were given a little brain and allowed to manage its own moves without coordinating with the rest of the pieces, then chaos and defeat would be the result. In the same way, could an army in which everybody is a general actually function? Could it wage a war? Could one general tell the other what to do? Would the other obey that order? Clearly it could not. So even in the military we can't talk about equality. That's why we have military ranks. Those ranks are bestowed upon a soldier due to his or her ability, strategic thinking, judgment, past performance, competence, loyalty, etc. What do you think would happen to the team if we started bestowing ranks upon soldiers based on other criteria than those mentioned above? Ordinary soldiers would perceive that as an injustice to them, and it would undermine their morale, discipline and resolve. It would negatively affect their ability to accomplish a mission as a team and undermine the battlefield performance of the overall military unit. Likewise, imagine we started hiring soldiers who don't measure up to the required physical or intellectual standards. Further, imagine that because these certain soldiers were unable to pass the current entry tests, we'd lower the standards so that they could be recruited. But all the while, the existing soldiers had to pass the more stringent requirements. If the newcomers would get the same pay as the existing soldiers, you might wonder why anyone would do such a thing, which would so negatively impact on the unit. However, all this is happening due to the arrival of female soldiers. Standards are being lowered and rules are being relaxed. This magic gentleman equality has resulted in male Marines having to do a minimum of 3 pull-ups, while female Marines do none. As for boot camp requirements, male Marines aged 17 to 21 need to do 35 push-ups, while female Marines in the same age category need to do only 13 push-ups, well under half the number the men must do. For the advanced infantry requirements, male soldiers aged 17 to 21 must do 42 push-ups, female soldiers only 19 push-ups. In all cases, the men have to perform over twice as well as the women. In the case of requirements for the Marines, men have to perform 3 times as well. So much for the equal pay delusion. Consider the fact that only recently has the first female soldier passed the entry requirement of the Army's Special Forces. Just one woman among the thousands of men who have passed the difficult selection process in the past. She was a very rare exception. So what does that say about the suitability of women in combat? Naturally, the presence of women in the combat branches of the military has aroused the romantic interest of the male soldiers, potentially jeopardizing missions. It has also created potential danger for the female soldiers themselves, sexual harassment and even rape. Unsurprisingly, women's accusations of sexual assault by male soldiers have skyrocketed, and not only against the privates, but against commanding officers as well. Just imagine what would have happened during the recent border clashes between India and China if one side had field units composed entirely of female soldiers. Weapons weren't allowed by the two governments, so a bloody hand-to-hand combat ensued. Female soldiers wouldn't stand a chance against the male soldiers of either side. If one side fielded gender-mixed units, the male soldiers of those units would be weakened and the mixed unit would be defeated. Because, in this case, both sides fielded well-trained male units, both sides suffered injuries and deaths, but both held their ground. In the end, pretending female soldiers have the same strength and abilities in combat as their male counterparts is a self-defeating, deceptive proposition. Accepting female soldiers has undermined the unity of the military and its effectiveness. It has undermined the sense of justice among male soldiers and has created jealousy and even rivalry. All these are factors which negatively affect the successful completion of a mission. Why would any country allow this type of situation to happen? I can only think of one reason. Men, steeped in the gentleman tradition and saturated with propaganda telling them that women are equals in every field, are reluctant to tell women when they don't perform well. Unfortunately, women seem to struggle with the notion of a merit-based hierarchy. Could that be because they're afraid that if a hierarchy is based on merit, they'll be near the bottom? Why else demand equal pay, regardless of merit? Throughout human evolution, there were times when different clans clashed head-on, different cultures interacted, different philosophies met, and different economic systems competed for primacy. These interactions and competitions always happened between different tribes, ethnic groups, nation-states, empires, companies, and armies. Today, however, another type of clash is happening. This one is between men and women of the same country and culture. During the entire span of human evolution and civilization, hundreds of thousands of years, men and women coexisted in peace and harmony, complementing and supporting each other. This created favorable conditions not only for the immediate survival of the group, but also for the hunting, fighting with competing tribes, raising children, cooking, establishing agricultural tool-making, among other things. Humanity came a long way because of its strong family bonds and cooperation among members of clans. But suddenly, as if all those years of development and experience meant nothing, our feminist-inspired women decided all that was bad and that our ancestors were wrong about everything. They decided to discard all the civilization, all the experience and skills that thousands of years of evolution have passed on to us. They decided that it wasn't fair that women had evolved to concentrate on child rearing, cooking and housekeeping, while men accepted the dangerous roles in the social contract, the hunting and fighting. They assume that throughout the ages women only accepted their role because they were forced into it by their men. They complain that women are still coerced into that role. They imply that women have been exploited, raped, and taken advantage of in the past, and still are today. Surely, they assume, it would have been so much more fulfilling for our ancient female ancestors to hunt dangerous animals and to fight off their clan's enemies with spears, axes, and fists. And since our male ancestors were so evil and repressed their women, why should women now respect any social norms or customs related by men? And so they decided not to. Because feminists believed that injustice had been done to women, they decided that childbearing, child-rearing, and homemaking were inferior to what men had been doing. They declared that women would show that they were equal to men by doing the same tasks. They expected and asserted that women could do those tasks just as well as men, in spite of the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that has made them unsuited to performing those tasks. The goal was to make women identical to men and to erase gender differences. Although they outwardly despised their patriarchy, they showed their secret admiration of men by aiming to make women take on all the masculine traits that they claimed to loathe. So, now, this brave new society, for the first time in human history and evolution, has both men and women with identical roles in society. Both are breadwinners. Both are CEOs. Both are warriors. Both are homemakers, and both are child raisers. Women are told that they should no longer prefer their long-standing role as childbearers and mothers. They unilaterally decided that the role was of minor importance and that having a career was much more important and fulfilling for women. In fact, the subtext of feminist declarations and policies seems to be that men should raise children and maintain the home, since the modern career superwoman doesn't have time for those unimportant tasks. You'd be forgiven for thinking that I'm reading a fairy tale from Hans Christian Andersen's storybook. That's how absurd this philosophy sounds. Who would think that modern humans would deliberately discard the rules that evolution has made them most suited for? How bold feminists are. How confident. Never mind that civilization is a fragile construct and that experimenting with its foundations could cause it to collapse. Never mind that once a civilization is destroyed, it takes hundreds of years to rebuild it. Feminists don't care about any of that. Only about their concept of short-term social justice. That's the actual feminist attitude and philosophy, followed by most Western women and endorsed and enforced by most Western governments. Naturally, it turns the entire relationship between men and women on its head, affecting, in the process, everything from business and government, economic policy, education and defence, in courtship, marriage and divorce. It's turned men and women from partners to competitors and almost enemies in every field. It's dangerous and frightening because such an arrangement is simply not natural and is bound to create conflicts and divisions. It's already created more problems than it's solved. What mayhem it's led to. Has it made women happier than they were before it started? No. In fact, depression among women is a major problem in the West. Marriage is at an all-time low. Divorce is a chronic illness in our society. The family has been destroyed, and a generation of children is growing up without fathers. Nobody has benefited, but still the feminists scream that women are oppressed and demand more empowerment, hurtling towards the cliff of total social breakdown. So how can men and women, now that they are competitors, continue to survive and thrive together in harmony? Is it even possible? Every man has to wonder these days whether it's really viable to still treat today's feminist, career-minded, anti-family women as if they were still the cooperative, supporting, gentle, family-minded ladies of a bygone era. The new woman has emerged from her cocoon with a loud roar, but she has been greeted with a strangely quiet whimper by men. So how can these two completely opposite social norms, the gentleman and the tough, dominant women, coexist? As you could imagine, they don't coexist very well. But why not? Here the joke is on men. Men's courteous, helpful behaviour towards women is arousing a very different type of response from today's women. Instead of receiving the polite and friendly response men got during the last century or even 50 years ago, their gentlemanly treatment of women is greeted with scorn, contempt, and even ridicule. Turn on the television and you'll see sitcoms in which men are goofy nerds or ridiculously immature. Sit through a few minutes of the sitcom and watch a commercial. Again, men are invariably stupid and ignorant. A brilliant, confident woman rescues him by telling him about a product that he should buy. Today's women seem to view men as either dull and contemptible, or, if he is rich and successful, as someone to be used for financial gain and career advancement, after which he could be discarded. Not surprisingly, women file for more than 2/3 of all divorces. Why wouldn't they? Men are regarded in our society as either fools or villains. The law has been so manipulated in the family courts under feminist pressure that women usually get half of even a poor man's assets, even if they brought nothing into the marriage but themselves. Since women almost automatically get custody of children in our society, not only do men lose their houses, but they also lose their children, for whom they then have to pay child support, while paying alimony to the wife, even when many of the ex-wives start dating and living with another man soon after the divorce. Does that seem fair and just? Women said they wanted fairness and justice, but now that they're empowered, they don't give it to men. The current divorce legislation is a system that victimizes and steals from men. Today's women have become cold predators and are far from the supportive, caring Victorian ladies for whom gentlemanly treatment was intended. On the contrary, most women have transformed into the most calculating and tricky competitors, if not outright enemies, that men have ever faced. Amazingly, despite contemptuous treatment men are getting from women these days, they continue to blindly follow the gentlemanly protocol. Like old horses with failing vision, they remain in their harnesses because they can't see clearly enough to break free and run off. The marriage rate is at an all-time low, and women are wondering, where have all the good men gone? Women are less happy than they were 30 years ago. Men are refusing to enter relationships with them because they don't trust them. Unless men change their attitude towards women, relations between men and women will continue to go from bad to worse, not only for men, but for women too. It's time for men to recognize and accept the new world. Women have changed from supporters to competitors. They have changed from life partners to opportunistic exploiters. If men continue with the gentleman protocol, avoiding any criticism of women and not taking any action to correct the unfair laws and double standards which favor women across the board, there will be no place left for them in the modern world. A wise man helps his friends, but not his competitors or enemies. If he helps them, he will be defeated and exploited. And so far, men are the clear losers in this modern mismatch between the gentleman and the female predator. The result is destroying our society and our economy. I come to my verdict. The focal point of my book is whether acting like a gentleman is appropriate in the workplace today. Men seem to be confused about what it means to be a gentleman and how, where, and when they should act that way nowadays. The gentleman doctrine and the gender equality doctrine are mutually exclusive. They should not be applied at the same time. If they are, men will automatically come out the losers, just the way it is in today's society. Unfortunately, today, many men still assume that somehow they owe it to their female colleagues to help them with all sorts of job-related tasks that are difficult for them. I have done that myself numerous times and see other men do it as well. Once, I even saw a company boss do it for a female employee. But is this the right thing to do in the workplace in today's world of gender equality? Either women drop the equality claims and equal pay demands, or men need to stop helping them with everything on the job. Likewise, men need to stop pretending that women perform equally in every job. Women should be ashamed of their double standards, and since women are rude enough to demand equal pay even in jobs where they perform less well, then men need to be rude enough, or at least honest enough, to reject such demands. We should remain polite and courteous to women, but on the professional level, we must treat women in the same way we treat men. That will promote fair play, team cohesion, economic efficiency, profitability, and smooth relations between employees. Giving women preferential treatment undermines all of those. Giving women an unfair advantage at work in a bid to make them equal just because we feel sorry for them or have been taught to always help and take care of them as gentlemen is the worst possible policy for any business. Special perks for women lead to less efficiency, uneven distribution of duties, distractions among the male staff, possible jealousy among the female staff, higher labour costs and less overall competitiveness. Due to those issues, a Western company is more likely to go offshore in order to survive or go out of business. If that happens, all workers will be negatively affected. And that's why men need to see to it that our companies run as efficiently as possible, with an even playing field for men and women, one based strictly on merit and not on affirmative action or gentlemen's preferential treatment of female workers. For the sake of our countries, families, societies, children, economies, justice, security and future prosperity, let's keep gentlemanly etiquette where it belongs and what it was meant for, public places and the home. Let's keep it out of the workplace where it was never meant to be and doesn't belong. Thank you for listening to my talk.